This is an extract from the Leader podcast by the Evening Standard, hosted by me, David Marsland. To hear the whole thing, search for us on your podcast provider. We know about the economic crisis that's hitting central London because fewer people are going into offices. On this podcast, we've spoken to the restaurants without customers. We've heard about the bars that used to come alive at 5 p.m, now almost empty until closing time. Even the small newsagents are struggling because no one's popping in just to pick up a snack. Now the full scale of the battle to save those places can be revealed. The Evening Standard surveyed FTSE100 companies to ask when they're planning to get staff back behind their desks. Our editorial column says the results show tens of thousands of people will stay at home this summer and some won't be back at all this year.
When the Prime Minister declared recently that the government's work from home advice would change on August 1st, he simply said,
"Instead of government telling people to work from home, we're going to give employers more discretion and ask them to make decisions about how their staff can work safely."
That was passing the buck, and there's been little since to make clear how it should happen. The result is that without firmer government advice to rely on as support, many companies are understandably reluctant to shoulder the moral and potential legal risk of bringing staff back. It's not good enough, though workers need to focus efforts too, where they can. Otherwise, more jobs will be lost as a vicious circle of depressed economic activity kicks in. It's time to make the return to the office a reality.
Well, the Evening Standard City journalist Simon English is one of those who's been working on this story. And Simon, we asked FTSE 100 companies when their staff will go back to the office, and there's not exactly a stampede, is there?
It's very far from a stampede, and also I have to say not much sense of urgency. Our reporter Jo Burke did fine work here, and she spoke to most of them, and there's this government feeling that people need to get back into the office, certainly in central London, and the feeling from, our biggest companies overwhelmingly is, well, let's just wait and see.
Is this just a safety thing? Are they worried about the safety of the employees coming back, or is there more to it than this?
I think there's a bit more to it, actually. I think for one thing is there's a bit of confusion, so the government's messaging has been somewhat mixed, I would say. So they're doing things like, on the one hand, they're saying, look, it'd be good to get back into the office if you can, and sometimes seeming to say it a bit more harshly even than that. And on the other hand, there's policies to increase the congestion charge, which makes it much more difficult, much more expensive for a lot of people to get back into the office, given that they may be understandably not keen on public transport. And that's one of the things Martin Sorrell, the advertising guru, is one of the things he said to us. It's he's got a lot of staff who live quite a long way out of town. They don't want to use public transport, and a taxi will be punishingly expensive because of the congestion charge. What are those people supposed to do? And certainly his view was that he could see why government policy is confused, but nevertheless it is confused.
And when Boris Johnson announced this, he said that he didn't want to interfere in businesses' decisions. But I wonder if some of those businesses feel like he was kind of passing the buck back onto them.
Yeah, I think that there's definitely a sense of that. And one of the banks that I spoke to as part of this said that they felt they were under pressure to get everybody back into the office, almost as a sort of confidence boost to London, to say, look, we're all back in. And they did feel a bit pressured to do what they, at this point, are nowhere near ready to do. They really don't want to start imposing things on staff who, from their point of view, have worked hard in difficult circumstances. They don't want to pressure people at this point.
But does it matter at all if people aren't going back to the office in London city centre, Simon?
Yeah, I think it does. I mean, just walking around today and yesterday, I mean, it's not the London I know. In some ways, it's quite nice to have more space to yourself. But I mean, you can see the effect on what makes London London. A lot of the pubs and the restaurants and all the things that make London brilliant. Well, if half of them don't survive, it's not going to be the same city, is it?